I think we can start. Hello, friends. Thank you for coming to Drupal Camp Belgium in this beautiful city Ghent, and thank you for coming to this session. You know, when you Google for top tips for a speaker, the first one will be like prepare a sexy theme name. You know, so I thought automate your code quality control in 5 minutes will be pretty appealing, but obviously this is lie, because we will do this in 2 minutes. And the rest of the time I can talk about my fancy jacket and life experience about football, books, and rock music. But in general, for this topic, we'll start from simple to more complicated things. Like we will define the problem, we will evaluate the risks of having a bad code, and we will finalize everything with actually a way or proposal how we can automate it on the very early stage in code development life cycle. But as usually, let's start with introduction. My name is Yauhen Zenko. I'm originally from Belarus, from Minsk, or Wit Rusland, like a lot of people in Netherlands tell it. Now I'm living in the Netherlands for 4 years, and I work as a technical lead at Colors web agency. So I'm responsible for internal technical processes, customers communication, internal technical improvements. But also my big focus is people. Like we are spending 70% of the time in our working place, and I really want this time for myself and my colleagues, friends, to be a happy time. Also, last years I tried to put a lot of efforts into local communities. So as I'm originally from Belarus, I have, still we have a team there, and I organize Drupal user group Belarus. It's quite active community. We have 50 plus people in our meetups. We started also user group in the Netherlands, in Den Bosch, in Brabant, where other, let's say, user groups are not very active in this area. And the rest I've been involved in Drupal since Drupal 5, and my hobbies are, the stereotypic hobbies of a man, and except that I like fancy jackets. So, the talk will be based on 3 assumptions. First assumption is that quality is not a variable. So when we develop a project, almost anything can be variable. Scope, development time, financial efforts, in general, like team efforts. But I truly believe that we, as software developers, should be like preachers and warriors of the idea that quality is a cornerstone of the software developer, of software at all, and it can never be a negotiation point. The second assumption, famous humoristic Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And of course, it's not a real law, but and only humoristic, but how many humoristic things we see in our software development practice every day. The third assumption is a man is a little bit lazy. I thought that it would be a nice description, but lazy is a, I don't want to be referred as a lazy guy. So I think that a man is a little bit non-conformist. What it means? It means that everybody has its own way to doing things. So I do same, but different. So I always try to find my optimal way of development, coding standards, living a life. So it makes it very hard to introduce to the company like guidelines or formal agreements, etc. Anything that can unify your way of work or result is very hard to introduce. So these are 3 assumptions. Let's start with actually code problems. Again, from the very simple to more complicated. Syntax errors in the code. You may tell me that no, it's not possible in professional company, but again, Murphy's Law and my own experience tell me that from time to time you will notice like just syntax errors into the repository, just when people try to Control S things or whatever. But this is very simple, syntax errors. The second one is a little bit more complicated, like when people are not following the coding standards, or they don't have coding standards, let's say introduced in the company, in the team, etc. Or they just do everything a little bit different from each other. And the most complicated problem is a structural problem. When your code is not performing, not secure, or something like this. So these are obvious things, and maybe bad code exists. We can all agree on this, but until it works, so we don't need to do anything. Maybe, but there are really a lot of risks about having a bad code in your company, in your software. So few things about how bad code can harm us. First one, not very obvious, is psychological. So just a simple example. Besides being a software developer, I'm a father of 5-year-old guy. And imagine the situation that I'm back from work, tired but happy. Maybe I succeeded to put a project live or whatever. So I want to get home, want to have a wine with my wife, sit and discuss the situation of the day. And I open the door, and in Netherlands, kids have so-called afspreken, when they meet the friends from their school and they do something together. And usually if you imagine the 5-year-old guys doing something together, then it's a huge mess. So and in this case, I don't want to have a wine, I want to have 3 vodka shots and just sleep. Yes, no more talks about how it went. I just want everything to be cleaned and then to relax. So for me as a software developer, I have pretty much the same feeling when I open the code, which looks crappy. Yeah, when you see that it's bad. And from my experience, it takes you time just to focus on something, just to start doing your job. So when you see the bad code, you cannot immediately start working, but you focus, you concentrate, you have another coffee, or if go for a walk, and only then you can start cleaning it or whatever. So you are pissed off. And pissed off person, pissed off developer is not a performing developer. And the second one is of course reputational. Especially in our open source thingy that we are doing, we often share the code. We share the code to partners, we share the code to community members, and the way how your code looks, it's a characteristic of your company, of your professionalism, your personal professionalism. So we shouldn't allow our code to be bad. And the second, of course, is time. So all in all, it makes a huge economic impact to have bad code. So I think it looks like this. So you're just throwing money away, or this, even with the money gun. So we have a problem. We need to find a solution or a way to approach this problem. Usually it's done by a combination of 2 approaches. It's processes and instruments. So what we usually do in the software, we introduce, okay, let's do like as a process, let's do weekly code reviews. Let's formalize on paper our agreements, how we develop the code, and sign it or whatever, agree with the team to follow it. Or we are using some tools that can help us to make our code better, to track its errors. We will not focus on processes, we will just quickly look again from simple to more complicated to the tools that can help us to see the problems of the code. First one was syntax errors, very easy. We have built-in native functionality, PHP running PHP in lint mode, where it can track if your code has syntax errors. The next one is famous PHP Code Sniffer. Who uses Code Sniffer or who knows about it? If you don't know, this great tool, it analyzes your code on violation of code standards. It has some standards out of the box, but also it's very easy to install and configure Drupal and Drupal practice code standards. Integrates with PHP Storm, and if you are a really geeky developer, you can always add your own code standards. Great thing about Code Sniffer, then that it comes together with Code Beautifier and Fixer, with it's the tool that can do a lot of work for you. So actually, it checks your code against violating these standards. It creates diff, and it automatically applies this diff for you. Of course, it's not true for meaningful errors. If you are missing the comment, for now, Code Beautifier will not write a comment for you, unfortunately, but maybe in the next version. This is the tool to actually track how your code looks and how it's formatted. For the third type, let's say, of the problems, when we have structural problems with the code, we often use so-called static analysis tool, which can actually track all your code and try to find structural problems when your code is not performing loops or whatever, or not secure, using not secure methods. And there are a lot of tools like this, like SonarCube, Exacat, very interesting tool for code analysis. But we are using PHP Mess Detector. Why? Because it's very simple. It's simple and fast. It doesn't have huge amount of rules and rule sets. It has only 6 rule sets and maybe 40 rules. But it's enough to, let's say, start working at least with the code quality. And it has very simple configuration. Just an example, XML file. In our practice, we use PHP Mess Detector to check on early stage if our code becomes too complicated. So we are using cyclomatic complexity, excessive method length, excessive class length, and so on and so forth. So only several rules that show us, okay, guy, probably it might be a problem with this code. Okay, we have a problem. We know that we need to face the problem, to fight this problem, and we need the tooling. The question: how many beautiful people will run these tools during their daily routine? When they edit few lines of the code, when they edit one method? 0. And I will be one of these 0 people, let's say. Excuse can be different. That I'm experienced developer, I know how to write my code. Don't touch it. I edit one small thing, so it cannot break actually anything or cannot make the code worse. Or that the code was already so bad that making it a little bit fancy is not the right, let's say, effort. So still, how to fight this situation? Maybe let's do more code reviews, not weekly but daily and with the whole team. Maybe let's punish people who are not following our standards. Or let's be individually more responsive. I like this very much. But I don't think that this is the idea that or options that we as software developers should follow. Right now we all love the word automation. And how to automate these tools to work together with us. When we add the line of code, when we add one file, when we add one method, can we do something with this? Often the code quality thing is done during the CI, continuous integration, continuous delivery process. But it takes time. It takes time while your build is running. It takes time to get the feedback from the CI tool. And additional problem is when you run the CI tool, the code, bad code sometimes, is already in your repository. And we found out that it's much harder to get out of the bad code when it's already in repository than before it's there. So we thought it's a nice idea to integrate with Git, especially with the fact that Git provides a nice opportunity to, let's say, inject into the process of working with Git. And it's Git hooks. And in our particular case, we use pre-commit hook. Pre-commit hook gives you a chance to execute custom script right before the commit is created. So you are able, in this case, to terminate the commit if you want on some, let's say, situations. So working example, how it actually, I think it's still visible. So I want to add a file to the commit. Then I want to actually do a commit. And immediately my, let's say, file in the commit is checked automatically. We have syntax error, the commit is terminated. So then I try to delete this syntax error. I try to do commit again. I see, okay, you have styling problems. And Code Sniffer can automatically fix it for me. Oops, yes. So, and so during the just commit, executing commit command, I see my problems. I see problems with syntax, and I force that commit is not executed. Then I see that there are styling problems, and I can immediately, automatically fix one of them. Let's say here in the example, we are not forcing commit, let's say, termination if there are some styling problems, just because we are very loyal, let's say. But let's say it's possible to force. And finally, we check with PHP-MD the complexity of the code. And with this simple example, it's not complex. So how it actually works, how it looks in the real life. So in the real life, this is really a huge bash script, which is not easy to understand and maintain. So let's say we did this, we tried it in the project, and it actually worked for us. So it made it easier to find the errors on the early stage. For example, when I work on the class and I try to commit it, I immediately see that there is a problem. The class is too big. A lot of methods is there. Why it's important and why it works in our development process is because we have a general rule, commit small. Yes, we don't like when our commit is 10,000 files or 100 files or 10 files. Commit small, and in this case you can really be flexible with the state of your application. And you saw that this evaluation checks, they're very fast. That's why we are using PHP-MD and not, for example, Exacat is a huge tool with a lot of rules. We just want to make sure that when we commit files to the repository, they already meet a particular standard. So, but the problem with this was that it's hard to maintain this script and to reuse. So actually, yeah, how would I do the new, let's say, Git hook and share it in my project? So, and again, first I need to install Code Sniffer, I need to install Drupal standards to it, I need to install PHP-MD, and again, it's used globally, and I really would like to use it locally, in my local project. So we thought that let's put on the roadmap the idea that composer package, we would like to include the composer package that will do everything for us, that will install dependencies, and that will help us to write this huge bash script automatically. So, and right now we are in very, let's say, alpha step of the this composer package, but it actually exists. And I want to share the idea how it works. One moment. If you see it, I think it. So what we do, we just run the package installed with Composer, and we run the configure command. In this command, you can select the type of the file extensions that will be evaluated by this script. You can select folders to ignore, and you can actually set also PHP-MD configuration if it's different than the minimal one. So this is about automating your code quality control in 5 minutes. You run the configurator, and then you also fill in the path to your vendor folder, and it's there. It's generated. You can automatically install it. So it basically copies the file to your Git hooks folder, and then, bam, I also created a fancy file with just 3 lines of code, ugly code. I try to commit it right after running this configuration thingy, and I try to commit it. And I get that there are no syntax errors. There are some, let's say, problems with the styling. I would like to fix all of them. One I cannot fix automatically because it's meaningful, its comment is missing, but I don't want to terminate the commit. So I hope you know what you do. And we start with PHP-MD testing, which successfully executes. So actually, give me my presentation back. So one package, you include Composer require this package. Like I mentioned, it's in the alpha state. We implemented this yet for ourselves, but we will continue working on and testing it, so we are sure that it works in all the situations. But for now, in its actual demo, so yeah, it's just an inspiration how you can automate things and check things on check your quality of the code on very early stage of the development phase, let's say. That's it from my side. I think I'm right on time. So we have some time for your questions. 5 minutes.